So many agendas. Okay, welcome back this morning, folks. This morning we are going to take up S-157, which is on our committee's website. And I do want to call your attention to that late yesterday, we received a memo from the ACLU, which is also posted on our website. Hold on, I gotta refresh. Oh, okay. Oh, this is driving me nuts. Sorry, my iPad is not cooperating. Okay. Right. Yeah. This is wild. Okay, Katie. We do have a copy of S-157 on our webpage today. Good morning.
Katie McGlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. You have a draft on website, two colors, and I'll tell you why. The newest colors are in blue. I know that's hard to read on a hard copy. It's not so bad on the screen. The reason I'm retaining the old highlighting, so I'm trying something new and seeing if I can bring a highlighted copy back to the Senate so they can literally see exactly the changes we made. So give it a try. If this is too confusing, I won't keep doing it, but for today, it's two colors.
Will you pull it up? Thank you. I'm just, my iPad's not cooperating this morning.
Okay. So first we have the definition section. You'll remember when we last met, we were talking about changing some of the antiquated language in the chapter. What we found is that sort of when you pull one string, something else unravels somewhere else. So I had a discussion with the health department, and I think they're interested in maybe doing a more comprehensive review of the chapter to clean up the language. So in order to sort of draw a line somewhere, I made the change of substance abusers and changed it to individuals with substance use disorder. That felt fairly discreet. And I didn't make any other changes. So that's what you're seeing in section 1. So you'll see this take through here. Substance abusers would be individuals with substance use disorder. In subdivision 2, recovery residents, here are the changes we talked about yesterday. It means a shared living resident supporting residents recovering from a substance use disorder that provides residents with peer support, assistance accessing support services, and other community resources related to substance use disorder.
Can you just go back up?
Yeah.
And what page are you on? That's 1. Okay. So you added that definition.
I did, because to strike it out in every instance that it appears, I had to add that subdivision 5.
Okay. Okay. All right. I didn't understand that.
I'm sorry. There are
No.
4 instances where substance abusers appeared, and in order to catch all of them, I had to add the subdivision 5 in to do it.
So it just brings up the question for me of the title of designated substance abuse counselor.
That is one of the strings. So changing substance abusers to individuals with substance use disorder throughout pulls up this definition. And then, this definition is probably, I think the health department has identified this as one of the ones they would like to change. But as we go further, then there are further changes.
Okay. All right. And I spoke with folks from the health department as well. We have a commitment from them to update language, full language in this chapter, to be more current and use more respectful language as the field has evolved, and we'll be doing that over the summer. And it will take a bit of work because it's not it's not fast. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. That just threw me off for a minute having it additional, and that's okay. All good.
Similarly, is it another string with substance abuse crisis team?
Yes. Then we pulled up 4810, which had a lot of issues or a lot of antiquated language in it. You amend that section, you'd amend it here, you amend it 4810, and then you'd see, 10 other places or top words that you'd probably feel were antiquated and want to fix. So it was sort of a little bit of a
Once you started.
Yeah.
Thank you for making the choice of, highlighting and making the change for the individuals themselves,
okay.
which is the most important change.
Okay, great. So in 14, you have the same change, substance abusers to individuals with substance use disorder. Subdivision 15, same change. Subdivision 16, same change. In section 2, no changes to that section, and that brings us to section 3. This is, again, the language about immediately exiting or transferring a resident. So we start off with what is in the agreement. And in subdivision 5, you made some changes yesterday, but no further changes after we looked at this highlighted language in subdivision 5. But then you do have some changes to the other criteria that have to be met to exit somebody immediately. So first in subdivision D, the health department proposed replacing stabilization bed with re-engagement bed. So that's the change on line 12. And you wanted to add the criteria that the recovery resident has provided written notice to the resident containing the date and rationale for the temporary removal or transfer and options for returning to the recovery residence. And then F, the concept is the same, but I just switched around the language to match how it appears up above. So the recovery residence has established a grievance process approved by VTAR, another certifying organization approved by the Department of Health. Your change in top of page 6, subdivision 3, switching out any function for functions as necessary to carry out functions related to the operation of recovery residence. Subdivision 4, this subsection shall only apply to a recovery residence that. Oh, let me walk you through this one. So when we left, we had that this was to be a definition, recovery residence as used in this section means. The health department raised some concerns about having matching definitions in 2 titles and what happens if a definition is changed in one place and not the other. So what this does is instead it's not a definition per se, but it references the definition. So this subsection that we just looked at, B, would only apply to a recovery residence that meets the definition of recovery residence in Title 18, Section 1 of your bill, and is certified. I believe that's it for changes.
So that still achieves the outcome of these exceptions only applying to certified recovery residences, not any recovery
Yes,
residence.
it's just framed not as a definition.
There any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
This one is pretty basic, I think, but I'm just back up. Top of page 3, the division's responsibilities, we've added number 5 at the top of page 3, line 2, recovery residences. Where did recovery residences sit before with respect to responsibility? Or are they just?
In statute, I don't think it appeared anywhere.
Okay. Someone from the side would be happy to jump.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm still fighting with this electronic piece of equipment. Go ahead, Emily.
Good morning, Emily Truder, Health Department. It is always set within the Division of Substance Use Programs, since it's been inception. There have always been, long before we started funding programs, organic things happening in communities for decades. But as far as the work that we've been doing it for, over 20 years. But this is formalizing that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Other comments or concerns?
One thing that I see coming up is when we say written notice, I think there might be alternative means of communicating with someone and making sure that we're encompassing those.
In the,
We've had language on this.
around that is in their preferred
Yeah,
method of communication.
yeah.
In our 938, I think that's, yeah.
It has to be something that's documentable.
Yeah, that's.
Because that's the kind of one of the whole purposes. So it's not just a conversation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You do.
To even have like in writing, because that's documentable, and as well as in their preferred method of communication, whether that's text or email.
I think David Riegel testified yesterday. I thought he referenced emailing.
emails he did.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Or in,
Well, don't, no, because we do, Katie, you've got some words that you've. We want to make sure it's documentable, so it's not, so it can be, verified, I
Thinking
guess.
about like a text message might be a written notice, and that is maybe outside the scope of what's easily documentable.
I think email, based on the testimony, might be appropriate.
So could we say maybe written or electronic?
Oh, there we go. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
What do you think?
Go ahead, you do.
Me. And F, on the page 5, the recovery residence has established a grievance process approved, or a certifying organization. I'm just thinking, a few of the people who submitted feedback, had talked about this independent grievance process. I'm wondering if we could make this temporary and then in the background, put a group together to work on creating a standardized grievance process. So, we learned in other systems having these different systems and rules in different places can be really extra confusing for people in crisis. I also think that, whether someone is right or wrong, a grievance process is a really important way for them to move on, to have an opportunity to have a voice. And I think we have a lot of history, as was raised in some of our systems, when there is not an independent system of oversight. And that's hard to say because I know the people doing this work and I value their work. It's, they're helping people transform their lives. But I also just want to make sure that if things change, there is that fallback. So that's what I'm thinking.
So what you're saying is that because because these organizations are members of VTAR, that's not sufficient distance or
Exactly.
independence from in that appeal process or grievance process. Brenda?
This is new to me, so somebody's being violent. How do you stop the right? Okay, you need to get out, you're gonna kill somebody. you have to stop and send them an electronic, you're being exited. How does that work?
No, we discussed that yesterday,
Yeah.
actually.
That is
We,
So how does that work?
they would take immediate action. And we said yesterday that that this bill requires rulemaking by the department and that the department would address the time period in rules. So like within, 24 or 48 hours
Oh,
or
okay,
something
because
like
I was gonna
that.
say, if they're gonna kill somebody, you need to get them out of
No,
there.
if somebody's
Stop
being-
and write them a note and say,
Yeah, no, if somebody's being violent, that's something we would expect people to take immediate action about. And so the rulemaking process is a public process. People have an opportunity to provide input. And so both, people who are directly impacted, whether you're a staff person or provider or an individual who lives in one of these residences or has before, they'll have opportunities for public input.
so is it in here that the proprietor or whoever has the recovery center has to get written within 30 days or something? So that the grievance can't come back and say, hey, you kicked me out and you didn't give me any help. I've
Well,
lived all this, so I know, because I've lived it.
There's not.
It's awful.
frame and
It's awful for the people that are trying to enforce safety for others.
We
That's how
added
it's done, by the way, I don't want to be rude, but it's pretty rough.
on page 7, Brenda, look at page 7 of the bill. We've added the components of
The old one.
rulemaking for the department to consider.
Page 7, I got the old one.
This part hasn't changed, I don't think, since yesterday.
Right, it says,
Everything on my
um,
page 7,
uh,
I have an old one. Nothing. Thank you.
we also have, just so you know,
Where did the recovery residents?
so, you understand the process through the Administrative Procedures Act. This committee also has an opportunity as the policy committee to review regulations prior to their, enactment, and to determine whether or not is consistent with the legislative intent. So, we will have an opportunity to review to ensure that the department has included information that we intended for them to include.
And I understand Representative McGill, but unless you've lived this, you really have no clue what you're putting people at risk. And the grievance is nice
Not with this.
and, oh, I didn't know.
You did start the conversation by saying you don't know much about it. Well, I will.
Well, I apologize,
Okay,
But we need to really think, because you're enabling bad behavior. So we need to really, really, really think about this bill.
okay, so the one thing that I am going to insist on is us being respectful of
I
individuals.
apologize.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the people, thank you for doing that, but I'm also talking about the people who are being impacted by substance use disorders.
And I know that, but you're not helping them.
Could you,
I want to help.
let me finish my statement. Thank you. I want to ensure that we're having respectful language of individuals and not making assumptions about what does help and what doesn't help, because we're not in their shoes at that moment in time. We do want to have the correct tools for people to be able to use in an emergency situation. We had that discussion yesterday in committee. I don't know if you were on or not, I can't recall. But we had that discussion yesterday and we had representatives of the people who provide these services online, and they were comfortable with that.
Yeah, I don't see this as helping people with recovery. Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Doug.
To Representative McGill's point, I have some reluctance to creating an additional apparatus or structure, and wonder if what we've inserted with respect to the reporting language and inclusion of exit and transfer data, whether that will help us with our monitoring, if you will, of the exits, and whether grievance processes and the like were followed. To me, that seems like a level of checks and balance that that works at my end rather than setting up a different apparatus outside for the grievances.
I think, for me, I would just say that I think that, we don't know that, I guess I'm trying to figure out what problem we're trying to solve. And so we don't know that this doesn't work. So I'm leaning more on what Doug said. Yeah.
And I was just gonna, put on in there. The National Alliance of Recovery Residencies, and as well as the SAMHSA guidelines that are outlined, provide all of these mechanisms in regards to, they're all in place through certification. To add another layer, as Doug would be expressing, is really not relevant.
Right.
I wouldn't, what I'm getting at is they are the evidence-based, nationally recognized agencies that govern and provide certification. Therefore, it's validly important that we follow what is already put into place and not add something that could have the potential of causing harm.
Right. I mean, I understand both points of view, you know, that there is established processes. It's a national organization. They had to get certified by the national folks. But it is also, these recovery residences are members, if you will, of VTAR, you know, so is it, I understand the comment that it's not really sort of independent. It's not independent of the system in the way, you know, like a human services board would be. And I'm not, for anybody from AHS listening, I'm not talking about having this go to the human services board. So don't, you know, go there. But, so I understand both points of view. I haven't heard any testimony that says that this does not work. But I think we'll have an opportunity, to see it in practice, and also have a bill that will be amending all of these statutes again. So.
And I'm fine with that. I'm just raising it as I raise it with like SASH, and, you know, I just have I think, very distinct view of separations of power, and we'll always point out when we should consider our dynamic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead, Esme.
I feel like there might be more to the story a little bit about like the investigative process with the TAR and who is precisely doing the work. But I don't have the information as that I think on the sideline, we might have more about the process itself, but I don't know if that is something that we want to hear more detail about.
Well, I would want to hear from Jeff,
Yep.
and I don't know if he's available.
I could ask, but yes, I mean, sorry, I would.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, but I didn't.
And also action circles, if you want me to ask Jeff if he can join, I can do that. And also, there is a process that's independent.
Yeah.
That I could meet, but I can also mention that.
It's okay, like, I'm still gonna vote for it, so if anyone
But
else.
we've got another
Okay,
person who
yeah.
wants to hear
Okay.
about it, so, yeah, Emily?
So as far as the, one clarification, the residences are not members of VTAR, they are certified by, so I do think that's an important clarification.
Okay, thank you.
As part of that, I think the other part of it is VTAR has volunteers that do the certification process, so they're not affiliated with the residents themselves, so it's truly independent.
I think if Jeff was able to describe a little bit for us what that process looks like, if he's able to pop on. Don't know if that's possible or not, but but you're reaching out. I appreciate that. You know, we have had, and I appreciate you bringing it up because we've had a lot of testimony in this committee about the Human Services Board and appeals for people in the human service, receiving supports and services in the agency of human services. And if we're not paying attention to it, nobody else is going to be paying attention to it. So even though I think this process, from what I know of it, is fine, I think it's fine to ask a few more questions and make sure that people are feeling comfortable enough with it to move along. So What I'm going to do is, Katie is here with us for a number of things. So we're going to switch to the next item and see if Jeff is able to join, and then we will come back if he is. Okay?
He can in a few minutes.
In a few minutes, okay. So maybe I first should ask, does anybody have any other questions or concerns that they want to bring up about S-157? So that once we sort of get that additional information, hopefully people will be okay. Okay? All right. Okay, Katie, let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is, that's the wrong day.
Is it S-206?
It is, excuse me, S-206. S-206 is longer. We do S-243 because I think that Jeff will be on in just a few minutes. And we've missed you, so we're glad we've gotten to see you the last few days.
I know, a few times last week I checked the schedule and said, what are they up to today?
Yeah.
I haven't opened 206, but S-243 coming in at 2 pages, I have to imagine is shorter than 206.
It is, for sure.
I pulled up, yes. So this is quite a short bill. This started as just a straightforward appropriation to the Vermont Language Justice Project. I know you'll hear a lot more information from Senator Gulick and probably from Vermont Language Justice Project themselves about the work they do. But they are an entity that makes videos and other forms of communication about public health issues in the state in multiple languages, so that information is widely distributed. The testimony downstairs is that they've lost some CDC funding, and hence this was brought. As we will see, there is no longer an appropriation in the bill, and the idea is that it would be funded if the funding moves in the big bill. You have Jeff here now. Do you want me to stop?
No, you can go through this. This is
Okay.
not going to take long.
Okay. So we have a longer finding session that Vermont ranks 6th per capita in refugee resettlement. The governor has recognized the important role that immigrants play in Vermont's economy. When health information is available in only one language and only in written format, it creates barriers that lead to confusion. The Vermont Language Justice Project's videos fill a critical gap in patient education, particularly for families with limited English proficiency. The Vermont Language Justice Project has created and distributed videos pertaining to COVID-19 and COVID-19 testing, the importance of immunizations and how immunizations work, Mpox, preventing mosquito and tick bites, and safety during flood events, hot and cold weather, cyanobacteria outbreaks, wildfires, and more. The Vermont Language Justice Project's videos are made in 10 to 21 of the languages commonly spoken in Vermont and in collaboration with the Department of Health. Last two, the Vermont Language Justice Project is usually able to respond to a crisis within 24 hours with information in multiple languages and in multiple formats, such as written translations, audio files, and videos. And in January 2025, the project's grant from CDC abruptly ended, leaving it to be funded solely through donations from individuals and foundations and through fee-for-service work. Then we have the language itself, that in fiscal year 27, to the extent funds are appropriated for this purpose, the Department of Health shall distribute $150,000 to the project to prepare informational materials for Vermonters who speak languages other than English in the event of a disease outbreak or other public health emergency, including ongoing personal and public health information. It's effective July 1, 2026.
Okay, thank you. And I think for committee members, we're going to hear about this later today, but it is also, I think we have some news around the appropriation side of things, and there may be some access to funds that were not accounted for here in the bill. So we'll take a look at it and we'll decide in the end whether we actually need a bill or not. So
Hopefully they can get private funds, because even 150,000 right now when people can't even feed their families is a lot. So hopefully they can work hard and 150,000 do a GoFundMe page. I'll donate to it. But I can't vote for anything that keeps burdening our taxpayers.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Katie. And Jeff, we're back on 157.
Thank you so much.
Did you get the question?
Yes, I've been following the last several days.
Okay.
And, I have a memo that I can send to you for the record as well, that details the grievance process that we have in place. But in short, it is a national standard for organizations to have an approved grievance process as part of the certification. So each individual home will have their own grievance process that they will share with the residents. On top of that, NAR asked that each of the affiliates have a secondary process, whereas if the individual's grievance doesn't appear to be taken seriously enough, or they don't feel like they've been heard, they can bring it to VTAR for review. And I just want to put an asterisk on, we are a certifying body. We're not an association. I know the language is confusing when we say alliance, but I want to make very clear, we're not an advocacy body for the operators. We're an advocacy body in the sense of scaling this resource for the individuals that are served. So we take very seriously the quality and the safety of these homes. And so to also further the independence of this process, we have volunteers outside of our organization that will be assigned to look at the concern. So they would meet with the resident and the operator, hear both sides of it, and then come back with a recommendation to the VTAR board. So that gives it even further separation. And we actually have volunteers that have lived experience in this area lined up to do that work. Fortunately, we don't get many situations that lead to that sort of thing, because when a concern is raised, we really encourage the operator and the organization to work through that. And oftentimes that step has been skipped. So when we come in and say, hey, folks, we are pleased to look at this, but before we do, let's see if you can work it out. And most often that happens and is best for all involved. So I think we have a very robust process that's already in place. The idea of another higher level review, I don't oppose if folks feel that that's necessary, but I do think we have a pretty robust process in place.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for describing that. And it would be great if you could forward that, the written description, and we'll just post that so people can review that. But thank you for providing that clarification and also describing the relationship between the residences, the individual residences, and VTAR being independent. That's helpful.
Certainly. The other thing I just want to put an asterisk on, David mentioned this the other day, it's a little bit hokey, but we have the bulldog poster in the homes, and it says, do you have a beef? And it makes very clear, that it's posted every time I do a certification visit, I make sure it's there. And so it's also in the handbooks in terms of the process. So we make it very clear that the residents do have this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Do people have other questions for Jeff? Okay, thank you so much for hopping on, Jeff. Appreciate it. And thank you, Meg, for assisting us with having Jeff here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And with regard to thank you to all of you. It sounds like we're in the home stretch, and I'm so grateful to all of you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, all right, so we're back on 157. Are there any other questions or comments or concerns before we move to a vote? Katie, are you going to want to
State the number.
give us, yeah, you did already. Okay. All right. So as the clerk is ready, which she is, what's the number, Katie?
3.1.
So I would entertain a motion to approve version 3.1 of S-157. Sorry, this is a strike all amendment, so yeah. I was gonna say as amended, but it's not, it's the whole thing.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Any final comments? Okay, the clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Bishop,
Yes.
Representative Cole,
Yes.
Representative Donahue, Representative Easties,
Yes.
Representative Garofano,
Yes.
Representative McGuire,
Yes.
Representative McGill,
Yes.
Representative Nielsen, Representative Noyes, yes. Representative Steady,
Yes.
Representative Wood.
Yes, and Representative Bishop will be reporting this bill. And so it will go on notice tomorrow and will be on the floor on Tuesday. All right. The bill that we approved yesterday will be up tomorrow, but just as a reminder to people, we are not going to, we're going to ask for a 1-day extension. So,
Email.
oh,
I sent you an email on it last night.
I did not see that. No.
Because there is per diems.
Hello, I just want to say thank you to Emily and Jessica for being here.
We're very excited. Thank you.
Okay,
Because there is a per diem.
it doesn't require any money.
Betsy Ann sent me an email last night that I sent over.
Okay. All right. Well,
You can
sorry,
go.
whatever. No,
Sorry.
it's fine. No, that's fine.
Is it?
It's all good. It's not any money.
Oh, okay.
Whenever per diem is mentioned in a bill, it's within the department's budget, and the department has said that they're fine with that. We have that in writing. But they will send it off to appropriations to say there's no fiscal impact. And, so
Procedure.
So
It's a
that
procedure.
actually works out to send it to, because they'll get.
so that'll be fine. So then
Yeah.
you won't
We'll
need
work out
to
on
ask for an
Tuesday.
extension.
And thank
So,
you for
Which is-
all your work, Dan. Yeah, I saw. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet. So thank you for pointing that out,
No
Dan.
problem.
Okay, so we'll have 2 bills, probably on tap. I'm just gonna let her know. Okay, so now we're gonna walk through S-206, Katie.
Sure.
You want a break?
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather.
Oh.
Right there with you.
I know, it's going around the building.
It is. I mean, there's so many people.
Trying to sit back. I know. I've been trying to lean back all morning. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. That is so funny. Okay, here's 206. I know that you've been anticipating this one since you worked on pre-K earlier this month. So what this bill does, you already, childcare providers that are regulated through CDD. This bill does not change that CDD would continue to regulate childcare programs. So that includes childcare programs, center-based childcare programs, and registered and licensed childcare programs. What this does, instead of looking at the program in its entirety, is it is a license for the individual provider. So if, for example, a center-based program and there are 5 childcare providers within that program, each one would have a license. This creates a number of tiers of licensure, and we'll walk through that. It also creates different variances for different situations. Several of them do sunset after a certain period of time, but one of them does not. Okay, let's dive in. So OPR, this would be one of the professions regulated by OPR. So this first section, oops, sorry, email from Daphne. Daphne, I just sent it to Megan. I'm sorry. Okay, so in this first section, there's a list of existing professions that OPR oversees, and this adds early childhood educators to that list of professions. And then in section 2, we create a new chapter in Title 26, which is the professional regulation chapter for early childhood educators who are working in programs regulated by CDD. This chapter is amended twice in this bill with different effective dates. So what we're looking at in this section 2 is the creation of the board and the mechanism for operating the board. This actually will appear in the middle of the chapter eventually, but the idea is that the board would have to be set up, the Board of Early Childhood Education, before the licensing program can begin. So the board is created first, and then in section 3, we see all of the specifics about who would be regulated under what license types. And all of the details that you're probably most interested in is in section 3. So first we have this board being created. The board is to have 9 members appointed for 5-year terms by the governor. 2 are public members, 2 each of ECE 1. ECE is early childhood educator. To save myself, I'm going to say ECE. So ECE 1, ECE 2, ECE 3, and then there's a licensed type of family child care provider. So there'd be 1 family child care provider on the board. All members are Vermont residents. The members who are early childhood educators shall have been active in practice in Vermont for not less than the preceding 3 years, and they need to be active while they're on the board. The public members are to be individuals that don't have a personal financial interest through a spouse, parent, child, or sibling, and the activity is regulated other than as a possible consumer of its services. Appointment is to be made without regard to political affiliation on the basis of integrity and demonstrated ability. Vacancies filled in the same manner as the initial appointment, and board members shall not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Board proceed.
I'm sorry, I think I just missed something that you said earlier about the board. I thought I had heard you say that the board is created as a first step, but it references ECEs 1, 2, and 3, which is not
Which
part of it.
won't
Is
be
not a chicken
created
egg
yet.
type situation,
Yes.
because there won't technically be ECE 1s, 2s,
2 or
3s, will there?
I mean, they won't exist yet. They'll exist technically a few years later. One way to deal with that is to parse out some of the definition sections. So some of the definitions would take effect earlier than other definitions. So you'd amend the definition section twice. Yeah, but in theory, it's talking about setting up a regulatory program for license types that are not yet in existence.
Right, and even if you had a different, even if you set up a different implementation date or effective date, you still wouldn't be able to call them these titles because it's only the board and the Office of Professional Regulation that can confer.
I mean, you could have members that have the qualifications for EC
Right.
1, 2, and 3.
Right.
That's the way to kind of get around
Thread
that,
that,
because
yeah.
you're never gonna have
Yeah, it's a good
the,
Right,
you
initial,
would have to spell that out, right?
Right.
That,
Right.
whoever's appointed to the board should have the qualifications that are referenced for EC 1, 2, and 3, so they're all represented.
Yeah.
I think that,
It's a good point,
Until,
yeah.
yeah, because you can't have someone be
No.
appointed as something that doesn't exist. yet.
Right. So the initial appointment would have to be different than the ongoing
Right,
appointment, yeah,
right.
So they would have the qualifications of,
yeah. For the initial board.
and then we would have to amend again to go back to
Right,
this.
once it's been implemented.
can it just be language in this paragraph B about, the initial Initial members meeting the ECE, intended to meet the ECE qualifications will have those.
You could do that, but then you'd probably want to strike it out later.
Yeah, so just for ease, it's a good issue to bring up, but we don't need to move to markup.
Thank you for the gentle redirection.
That's a challenge.
It's a good issue to raise, so that, so that Katie can be prepared for thinking about the issue.
So board procedures. Annually, the board is to meet to elect a chair, vice chair, and secretary. Meetings are warned and conducted in accordance, open meeting law. Is that open meeting law? No, that's Title III. I'll have to confirm what one VSA Chapter 5 is. Majority of the members of the board shall constitute a quorum. All business shall be transacted by a majority vote of the members present and voting unless otherwise provided in statute. Excuse me. And then you have the duties of the board. So the first thing the board has to do is adopt rules necessary for the performance of its duties in accordance with this chapter, including activities that must be completed by an applicant in order to fulfill the educational and experiential requirements established by this chapter.
Do boards like this follow this? Is 3 VSA Chapter 25?
LCAR.
Is that LCAR?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I just didn't know if they had to follow the same rules.
They do.
Okay.
Subdivision 2, the board has to provide general information to applicants for licensure as early childhood educators. Explain appeal procedures to licensees and applicants and complaint procedures to the public. And it has to use the administrative and legal services provided by OPR under Title III. The board is to conduct hearings and exercise its authority as provided in Title III. So as you gathered in Title III, there's a lot of language about governing OPR's functions. Okay, so when we get to the top of page 4, this is Section 3. This amends the chapter that was created in the previous section. And now you'll see we have subchapter headings. So everything we just looked at will fall into subchapter 2. So you'll see the ellipses when we get there in the new subchapter heading. So first we have definition of board. An early childhood educator is an individual providing care and educational instruction to children from birth through 8 years of age in a program regulated by CDD, including planning and implementing intentional developmentally appropriate learning experiences that promote the physical health and social, intentional, linguistic, and cognitive growth of children, establishing, maintaining safe, caring, inclusive, and healthy learning environment, observing, documenting, and assessing children's learning and development, developing reciprocal, culturally responsive relationships with families and communities, and engaging in reflexive practice and continuous learning. And then we have definitions of the license types. There will be more specific information on the particular criteria somebody needs to meet these categories later on. So in definitions, ECE1 is an individual who practices early childcare education as an assistant educator in a program under the supervision of an ECE 2 or 3, or a teacher who's exempt from this chapter and licensed by AOE under Title 16, and that person would have endorsements in early childhood education, early childhood special education, or elementary education. ECE2 is a person who practices as a lead or primary educator, supervises the practice of individuals licensed as an early childhood educator 1, and receives guidance from individuals licensed as an early childhood educator 3. I know that the question is going to come up, what's the difference between guidance and supervision? You'll see ECE1 has supervision, ECE2 has guidance, and so those terms are defined later on. ECE3 means an individual who practices early child care education as a lead or primary educator in a program, supervises the practice of individuals licensed as an ECE1, and provides guidance to individuals licensed as an ECE2. And then the fourth license type is the family child care provider. This means an individual who provides developmentally appropriate care, education, protection, and supervision of children from birth to 8 years of age and is authorized by CDD to operate a family child care home. So important to know that ECE 1 through 3 are permanent. The family child care provider endorsement or license is it's sort of a legacy designation. So as of, I want to say it's January 1, 29, if somebody is operating as a family child care provider up to that date, they can get a license as a family child care provider. If they start practicing as a family child care provider after that date, that designation would no longer be there, and they'd have to come into the program as an ECE 1, 2, or 3.
Guys, before we move on from the definitions, or get further into them, ECE 2 and 3, at first blush, it's hard to see the difference in those, and they both refer to them as lead or primary educators in
Mhm.
program.
Mhm.
Will that be fleshed out further?
Different educational requirements or experiential. Okay, page 6, here's guidance means direct or indirect consultative support. I'll just skip to supervision, on-site direct oversight. So that's the distinction between the two. And then program means a program regulated by CDD as a licensed or registered family childcare home or center-based program. It's not operated by a public school. Prohibitions. An individual shall not hold themselves out as an ECE unless they are licensed under this chapter or exempt. An individual shall not use in connection with their name, letters, words, or insignia indicating that they are an ECE unless licensed or exempt. And here are our exemptions. The provisions of this chapter shall not apply to the following persons acting within the scope of their respective professional practices. A teacher, actively licensed under Title 16 by AOE with endorsements in early childhood education, early childhood special education, or elementary education. An individual who provides care in an after-school childcare program that is regulated by CDD or another childcare program that is exempt from regulation, and an individual who works exclusively in a public school. This chapter shall not be construed to alter or amend the requirements of publicly funded pre-K programs that are operated pursuant to the statute that you spent some time looking at a month ago. The chapter is not construed to limit or restrict in any manner the right of a practitioner of another profession or occupation from carrying out in their usual manner the functions incidental to their profession.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So an individual, looking at line 11, an individual who works exclusively in a public school, if they're leading that classroom, I assume they're falling under the license that's referenced up above in 1. So do we have an individual who works exclusively? Would that be someone who otherwise would be the equivalent of an ECE 1 in a private setting?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
I'm trying to figure out who we
Who's in?
mean by an individual who works exclusively in a public school, because it seems like we take care of those who are the lead teachers, I think, by the language up above in lines 4 through 6, a teacher actively licensed through AOE. So what's left?
I would say, as you heard when you were looking at pre-K, sometimes there are childcare programs that are also in the school to provide that gap service, if there isn't a full day of pre-K provided.
Right.
And because if those individuals are only operating within a public school, they would be omitted from licensure under this.
But can I just dig in a little bit on that? So in that setting where a classroom is at the public school and you have a licensed teacher because the UPK requirements require that, but there are assistant teachers or teachers' aides in that classroom that are not licensed teachers. So we're saying that we're exempting those additional teachers from the licensure.
So
Right, is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, and then ultimately why, that's.
So you're talking about UPK hours though, and I think what I'm referring to is childcare hours that are.
Even in childcare hours, if they're working just at a school.
In the
that
school.
This is in a school,
Mhm.
this is exempting any
So,
teacher.
so when we talk to
Yeah, so we'll-
OPR
we'll
and
understand what
CDD and
the-
AOE, understand sort of the intent behind it.
But I'm just clarifying that that's
Yeah,
what this
yeah,
says, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Seems. Yeah. I'm not in the moment seeing why we would want to exempt childcare operators who just happen to operate within
A school.
on school
Yeah.
grounds.
We have private childcare providers under agreement with public schools that operate in the
Right.
school.
Right.
We also have more schools entering into the childcare space as they try to expand public pre-K.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a conundrum, but we'll hear from those folks. Good morning, Eric.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Okay, so what's your time constraints, Eric? Because I know that Chair Lalonde was wanting you to be down there too, or at least
I
a
just
couple of
came
days ago. Oh, you just came from there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Working on the same bill for the last quite a long time.
Yeah.
As I said to him, I'm waiting up, I'm gonna go talk to another committee, it's the same bill, I don't have to think of a walking up the stairs.
Okay.
Probably the stakes work again. or
Yeah.
something like that.
So, are you okay if we finish the walkthrough on pre-K? Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Okay. This subchapter 2, these ellipses, this is where the language would go that we looked at in section 2. So that's where that's being plugged in. Top of page 8, this is the licensure requirements. And this is where we break down different licensure types and talk about education and experience. So subsection A applies to everyone regardless of license type. To be eligible for licensure under this chapter, the applicant has to have attained the age of majority, achieved a high school diploma, a GED certificate, or an approved equivalent credential, and completed field experience in early childhood education as required by rule. And then we have specific requirements by license types. EC1 is to have received a certificate from an approved credential program in early childhood education requiring a minimum of 120 hours of training and instruction. ECE2 is to have an associate's degree in early childhood education or a related field requiring a minimum of 60 college credits, or they could have any unrelated field and a minimum of 21 approved college credits in the core early childhood education competency areas that will be defined by the board in rule. And then ECE3 has a bachelor's degree in early childhood education or related field with a minimum of 120 college credits, or any unrelated field and a minimum of 21 approved college credits in the core early childhood education competency areas. And then we have our family childcare provider. This person is qualified for licensure, if they're authorized by CDD to operate that family childcare home, they're in good standing as of January 1, 2029. The board shall not accept applications for this licensure type after January 1, 2029. So if somebody's practicing now as a family childcare provider, they can continue to practice that way indefinitely. But if they're if they're opening a family childcare home after that date, they're coming in as an ECE 1, 2, or 3. There is some language that we'll look at that says if you leave the practice for a certain period of time and you decide to again come back, that you have to come back as an ECE 1, 2, or 3. Approved programs can offer a college credit based upon assessment of the individual's competency acquired through experience working in the profession. And additional to the requirements of subsections A and B of this section, applicants shall pass any examination that may be required by rule. Okay, license renewal. The licenses are renewed every 2 years upon an application and payment of a required fee. Failure to comply with the provisions of the section results in suspension of those privileges. A license that has lapsed shall be reinstated upon a payment of the biennial renewal fee and the late renewal penalty. except family childcare provider shall not be renewed after a lapse of 2 years. Subsection B, the board may adopt rules necessary for the protection of the public to assure the board that an applicant whose license has lapsed for more than 5 years is still professionally qualified to be reinstated. Subsection C, in addition to the provisions up above, an applicant for renewal shall have satisfactorily completed continuing education. The board may, by rule, adopt continuing education for not more than 24 hours for the renewal period, so 2 years. Then we have the fees. I'm not gonna read all of this to you, but suffice it to say, you can see it's broken down by license type. Each license type has a application for the initial fee and a biennial fee, and the fee increases as the person's level of education increases. Okay, unprofessional conduct. In this case means conduct prohibited by Title 3 and a section specific to OPR misconduct or misconduct by OPR professions or by other statutes relating to early childhood education, whether that conduct is by the licensee applicant or an individual who later becomes an applicant. Unprofessional conduct is conduct that results in the licensee applicant or individual who later becomes an applicant being placed on the child protection registry, and conduct that's not in accordance with the standards of the early childhood educators published by NACI. Here are the variances. This seems to be where there's significant interest. So this section is amended again over time, and we'll take a look at that. So first, variance is subdivision A1. The board is to issue a transitional ECE 2 or 3 license to a teacher or director of a program who does not meet the educational or experiential requirements. These transitional licenses are to be valid for a 2-year period and shall be renewed by the board for an otherwise qualified applicant for an additional 2-year period with satisfactory documentation that they're doing ongoing work to obtain the proper requirements. At the conclusion of 3 2-year periods, the board at its discretion may issue one final 2-year transitional license. So that's how we get to 8 years for that particular transitional license. For an otherwise qualified applicant, if the licensee can demonstrate extenuating circumstances for not having attained the requirements. B, new variance. In addition to the one we just looked at, the board shall also issue an ECE 2 license for individuals who have completed the eligibility requirements set forth in A and D of 6221. So A was age of majority, diploma or GED. D was continuing education requirements. So if the person has completed those and they have either 21 college credits in the core early childhood education competency areas, or they have prior experiential learning that is assessed by an accredited institution to be the equivalent of those 21 college credits, then they are eligible for that variance.
So it's a variance, not a transitional.
Yes. Yes.
Katie, did you
Transitional license. Oh, no, it doesn't. It's variance. But these two go away after a certain period of time. So these are temporary. You'll see there's a third one that's going to be added that would be available on an ongoing basis.
so I have a question for you. I'm seeing the need already to have some sort of chart.
Okay.
And this may be something that between CDD and OPR, maybe together, maybe what I'll do is ask them. I'm just stating it out loud because I already know in my head that we're going to want to see what's current requirements for people who are working in the field. And then, the requirements and then the transitions and then, so we can kind of compare current to proposed future?
I think this chart might exist. I think.
I was wondering about
this on the Senate side.
Okay,
And I think it was OPR who prepared it.
okay,
I could be wrong. I
I'll
could
go
be
look,
wrong.
I'll go look for documents.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Um, Okay, top of page 13, disclosure by licensees. An ECE that's licensed under this chapter is to post information for current and prospective families. So I'll just step back on this one and say there's a lot of conversation about how would a family know who the regulating entity is, because if it's pre-K, it could be a licensed teacher under Title 16. Or if you have a concern about the program, then we're talking about CDD. Or if you have a concern about the individual childcare provider, or ECE, then it's OPR. So there was, this language was developed to require information posted to sort of explain to parents how the regulation, who is responsible for what. So in one, all available license types required, regulated by OPR. 2, description of OPR's regulatory authority and how to make complaints. 3, a description of AOE's regulatory authority over UPK and how to make complaints. 4, description of CDD's regulatory authority and how to make complaints. Okay.
Question that's seems to put the burden, if I'm reading this correctly, on the early childhood educator license pursuant to this chapter shall post and provide.
Mhm.
So an ECE 1, 2, or 3 is personally responsible for posting. It seemed like this would be an obligation we would put on
Provider.
a provider.
That's a good point. Yeah, the way it's drafted, it does have the ECE doing it.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know,
It's relevant for people who are family home care providers, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's sort of an interesting question is you have a chapter regulating ECEs. So would you want a requirement regulating like programs that everything else about the programs is in Title 33? So I'm wondering, maybe this would move out of this chapter and move to Title 33 if you're going to have the program responsible for it.
Well, it would seem that would be the case for the things that are related to CDD and AOE. Somebody's got, I don't know.
I
We'll
don't
have to
know.
consider, we'll have to consider that, but I agree with you.
I agree as well.
Sure, somebody's gonna tell us it makes sense, but right now, on first blush, it does not make sense on first
I mean, it
reading.
seems like each one would have to, and you
Exactly.
get like multiple.
Yeah,
Just functionally, yeah.
I hear the concern.
okay, let's keep moving.
Okay, so section 4, I told you that we were going to amend this section again, so we're amending this section 4 on variances at a later date. And what's really happening here is the addition of this new variant subsection C. This would take effect around the same time that the family child care provider license type goes away. So this requires the board to issue a transitional ECE 2 license to a provider of a family child care home who does not meet the requirements of an ECE 2, but does meet the educational experiential license requirements of an ECE 1. This transitional license is to be valid for a 2-year period and renewable for 2 additional 2-year periods, 6 years, while the licensee completes ongoing work to obtain the required educational experiential qualifications. So that exists on an ongoing basis around January 1, 2029. We're amending this section a third time, and that is because the first 2 subsections go away. And I can't recall the date off the top of my head, but we can take a look in the effective date section. Then you have a section 5 report on licensure that on November 1, 2031, OPR is in consultation with CDD is submitting a written report to various policy committees addressing number of licensees by license type, state resources necessary to implement the chapter, number and nature of complaints or enforcement actions, qualification required for each license type, any changes in the number of registered and licensed family childcare homes, recommendations to engage the opening of an additional family childcare home and any other issues the office deems appropriate. Section 6, this is the appropriations and the positions.
Getting a lot of contingency provisions this year.
I think that is maybe the default coming out of Senate appropes.
Can I know we're not doing markup, Madam Chair, but if I could just say before we move on, I'm just going to express some concern about the date of November 1 of 2031. Seems pretty far out there to get information. Maybe there's a final report then or something. I don't know, but just wanted to verbalize that while I was thinking about it.
We should look at the effective dates because the program itself isn't set up for a couple years out. It doesn't take effect July 1.
Good point.
It still might be too far out for you, but I think we have a 2 or 3 years before the program is up and running. Okay, so the establishment of a new permanent position, an OPR, an executive officer of the Vermont Board of Early Childhood Educators, and then a full-time staff attorney. And then in fiscal year 27, appropriation of $262,000 from the general fund to OPR to set up the program. Here's our contingency funding language. The duty to implement section 6 of the act, OPRs, well, that's the title of the act or of the section, is contingent upon funds from the general fund for that purpose. Then we have our effective dates. So the effective date section itself, section 1, which is the list of professional regulations, section 2, which is the board, section 5, which is the report that we just looked at, section 6, which is the appropriation and positions, and section 6A, which is the contingency. Those all take effect this year. Section 3, that's sort of the heart of the bill with all of the definitions and describing the different licensure requirements. That takes effect July 1, 28. The new variance, the third variance is added July 1, 29. And then the first two variances, A and B, go away on July 1, 2036. That's it.
Okay. There's a lot to digest here. Thank you very much, Katie, for the walkthrough. We start taking testimony on this bill next week. And we have a lineup of folks. And as I've said several times here, if you have providers in your regions who want to testify, please let Ray know. She's organizing our list of witnesses. So thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on and invite Eric. Thank you, Katie.
I'm going to try to sit back here, so I'm a little bit away from you.
Sounds good, thanks. Well, the way the bill sort of started.
I said Eric.
Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
So folks, we're now shifting probably about as far afield as we could from early childhood to forensic facility. We have S-193, which has made its way through the Senate and is being carefully reviewed downstairs in Judiciary. And I understand you presented an amendment down there just this morning.
Yeah.
So we would love to see the most recent version of that, if possible.
Absolutely. And good morning, everybody. Eric Fitzpatrick with the Office of Legislative Counsel. We're here, as the chair said, to talk a little bit with you about S-193, which is an act relating to establishing a forensic facility for certain criminal justice involved persons. As the chair also said, there's a very new amendment that we just walked through in House Judiciary downstairs this morning. So that certainly does make the most sense for that to be the version that everybody's looking at here as well. And it is, and I was going to ask, I noticed when Katie was doing her walkthrough of the previous bill that she had it on the screen. Do you guys generally prefer having a screen share,
It is
or-
helpful to have it on screen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So, but before we look at the language, it does help. This is there's a lot of dense legal language in this bill, and it's easy to get lost in the details without kind of remembering what the big picture is here. So the big picture is that this bill creates a forensic facility within the Department of Corrections to oversee and provide treatment to a certain universe of people who are transferred to the facility after having gone through the criminal justice system, which we're going to call the forensic system related to criminal proceedings, as a result of being found incompetent to stand trial or not guilty of a criminal offense for reason of insanity. So that's the avenue of people that are coming to this facility for treatment under S-193. So it helps for a minute to think, well, how are those folks treated now? Because those cases happen now, right? You have not guilty by reason of insanity cases. You have lack of competency to stand trial cases. And there is a current statutory system in place for those folks. The Department of Mental Health is the state entity that oversees those folks now under current law. That would not be displaced by S-193. This is a supplement because the idea is that because under current law, the folks that go to DMH are persons who are found either not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to stand trial. And then the court makes a finding that they're dangerous, that person in need of treatment, phrase that this committee has seen many times. Court has to find that. So that means dangerous to themselves or others as a result of a mental illness. So that leaves, there are a number of gaps left in that in theory, in practice, it's not going to, DOC is going to have to talk about how this would work, but the idea is that some of those gaps are filled by the forensic facility operated by DOC.
And Eric, just to be clear, so you'll probably doing the same presentation next door in mental health in the healthcare committee. So we are concerned, of course, with the whole thing, but our primary level of interest and jurisdiction is on people with developmental or intellectual disabilities. So folks who are found incompetent to stand trial and have heretofore been committed under Act 248 to the custody of the Commissioner of Dale.
That's right.
So that's the group of people who we kind of are narrowly focusing in.
Could I jump in
Please.
quickly? Also, the administration has said that individuals who have a substance use disorder could potentially,
Or brain injury or dementia as well. Yes, I just, thank you.
there are other groups, yeah.
Yeah. So those folks
Right.
fall under our jurisdiction.
Right.
Folks with mental health challenges, mental illness fall under the healthcare committee's jurisdiction. And I honestly, I don't know what their plans are about reviewing this bill, but we take very active interest in forensic services, particularly for people with developmental or intellectual disabilities, because there has been over the course of many decades now, community-based services for those individuals that's been provided by designated and specialized service agencies. So this would be a major policy shift for that group, and which is, I will say, a bit different than folks with mental illness, where that sort of comprehensive level of service has not been provided on the community side. They've been more kind of discharged to the community, and some not very nice things have happened for sure. That has not been the case for people with developmental or intellectual disabilities, because there seems to be a higher standard for services for that group of people. So I wanted the committee to understand that we are going to focus in narrowly on both people who are currently impacted in Act 248, and then the potential for people with substance use disorder, people with dementia, people with brain injury, that also fall under the purview of EDH and Dale.
Right, and those groups, at least with respect to substance abuse disorder, for example, dementia, that kind of thing, would certainly be are described by, at least by DMH, as part of this gap that would be covered by this bill. The interesting question, which I don't know, I'm sure you'll want to pose to the Dale Commissioner, as to whether or not their view is that the provisions of this bill would override any of their current programs, their programmatic approach to people that are coming into their custody as a result of a not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetency to stand trial. Would this be, because with respect to the, having spoken with General Counsel DMH about how this proposal fits into gaps that aren't currently covered, their take is that the people who come into their custody now, that this proposal doesn't override any of their treatment. It only would be how they might be treated under different facts. So in other words, let's say, for example, person doesn't need a hospitalization level of care anymore, then this bill would kick in. Whereas right now, there isn't anything in that situation.
And for the people under Dale or VDH that really don't have any current statute that governs them, so there is really no current programming that that it supersedes. So I think that, we have to understand that while people with DD or intellectual disabilities have a current set of services, that theoretically this would not supersede. But that other group of individuals for which there is existing gaps, both in the criminal justice system, but also in the service system, there is nothing in terms of expectation. So those folks don't currently get, the court doesn't determine that they can be placed in anybody's custody if that's their main issue, because there's no judicial way to do it.
Yeah.
And in previous presentations to Joint Justice Oversight, the department, I think at that time being represented by Attorney Schur, has said that the department lacked the resources to do that. And so we'll be anxious to hear from the department about what has changed in their perspective of that. So,
Right.
Okay. So Senator Gulick, thank you. We're running a little behind schedule. And we did have the walkthrough of the bill already on S-243 from Katie. And we at 11 o'clock are going to be starting to take testimony. Would you be able to come back at 11 or not?
The only issue is that my chair is out sick today.
Oh, she's okay. You're running. Okay. We'll loop back with you. How about that? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So, continuing sort of on the topic of who it is that would be covered, you can see if you're looking at the very first page of the S-193 draft as it currently is that it actually starts off with a very narrow group of people who would be covered by this in the first place. You see the criteria are on page 1. So actually, let me back up a second. As I mentioned, it applies to people who are found either not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to stand trial. Those are two different things. So they have to do with the defendant's mind state and their mental health situation at a different stage in the criminal proceedings. So if you're talking about the question of competency to stand trial, that's the question. That is the defendant's mental health condition at the time of the trial, right? At the time of the trial, are they able to understand the nature of the charges against them? And are they able to participate meaningfully in their own defense? That's your general competency standard. Understand the charges against you, participate meaningfully in your own defense. And the question is right then during the trial, that's when that question matters. It doesn't have anything to do with what your mental health condition was at the time you committed the offense. You could have been perfectly competent at that time. But the question is, are you competent when the trial is about to begin or at the criminal proceeding stage? Now, if someone is found, now back up for a second. So not guilty by reason of insanity, on the other hand, has to do with the defendant's mental health condition at the time of the offense. The time they committed the criminal conduct, they either couldn't understand that their conduct was criminal or they couldn't conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. So in other words, even if they did understand that it was criminal, they lacked the ability to act in a lawful way. That's the test of insanity at the time of criminal defense of insanity. The difference legally, and that's why sort of a segue into why you're looking at two different portions of this bill, is that a not guilty by reason of insanity defense is a complete defense. If that happens, criminal case is done. You can never be charged that person again. It's a defense because you've never had the legally necessary mental state to commit the crime. You never did. So you can't ever be charged with it. It's a complete defense. On the other hand, competency to stand trial, competency, it's a fluid thing with respect to, it changes. Person can be competent at one point, not competent at another. And that is not a complete defense. That is something that can be restored. So the focus of these two different groups of people in the bill is different. Competency, which is the first one we're going to look at. You'll see the very first title of that section is Competency Restoration Services within Forensic Facility. So when that person goes to the forensic facility, the idea is that they're giving treatment with the goal of restoring their competency so then they can go back to the criminal court and have their trial. That's the idea.
So, so I haven't read through this version. Is there anything that recognizes the fact that it is a person with a developmental disability has a lifelong disability? It's different than a person. You can't through medication or other treatment, or you can't restore them to not having a developmental disability. So if they were determined incompetent to stand trial on account of their developmental disability, how is there anything in the language that is being proposed that frankly understands that condition, that you don't restore competency to somebody who has a lifelong disability that you can't medicate your way out of, you can't provide enough therapy or anything else, that you're going to have a lifelong disability?
I would say from the perspective of judicial proceedings, the answer is yes, because the bill provides an avenue where if the court finds that you're not restorable and not dangerous, then you get released.
Right, but what if you're not restorable and you may be dangerous?
Then if the court finds that, then you are held for continued treatment. The dangerousness is the key. You're either dangerousness or not. If you're not restorable, the court a court has to hold a hearing on that restorability. And at that hearing, they have a forensic risk assessment that's done. The forensic risk assessment provides information about the person's condition, about their dangerousness, and then the court has to make a decision. Does the state's attorney carry their burden? The burden is on the state to show that by clear and convincing evidence, which is a very high evidentiary threshold, that the person suffers from a condition that would cause a substantial risk of harm to somebody else if they're released. If they can meet that burden, then they are held for treatment. And there's specifics about the treatment. It doesn't mean, you'll see the language, this was in the amendment that was just talked about. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the facility. They're held for treatment, but it could, that at least restricted means is the term that's used, so that it might be that community treatment would be appropriate depending on their level of dangerousness, but that's that route. But if they find that the person is not restorable and not dangerous, and in other words, the state didn't meet their burden of proving that, then they get released on conditions. So that's whether that goes far enough to address that situation is a policy decision for you guys, but I think that's sort of the structural approach that the bill takes.
Okay.
So in a way, that kind of gets me through the walkthrough of the first.
The first part.
Because that's
So I want to ask a sort of a very specific question about this section here that we're talking about right now. So can you tell us what are the offenses punishable by a life sentence? What specifically are those?
Yeah, there are about, I'm trying to find my list. There's about, depending on whether you count, second offense, L&L with a child, and third offense, L&L with a child. That's the same offense or different. Generally between 10 and 15 is the number that you're talking about. And I do have a list here. What did I do with that? Okay, here we are. Arson causing death, first degree murder, second degree murder, aggravated murder, kidnapping, L&L with a child second, L&L with a child third, human trafficking, aggravated human trafficking, maiming, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault, victim less than 10 years old, aggravated sexual assault, treason, and non-compliant, high-risk sex offender not complying with their conditions. So between 10 and 15, I think, is the number.
And so, so that's the first condition. And
Oh, yeah, light defense, right, exactly.
so the second is that they've either been held without bail, and I don't know what the section is referring to yet, but and if they're not held without bail, that they have a qualifying condition and would create a substantial risk
Yeah.
to other people. Now, is that substantial risk by clear and convincing evidence?
But that's the court's gonna have to find. Yeah, exactly.
That's, so when you were referring to that, okay. That they're not currently receiving treatment. I'm unclear about why this is only referencing mental health, statute.
I thought that I could be wrong on this, but at least 4822, I didn't know.
Oh, it might be 4822. The order of hospitalization doesn't pertain to people with developmental disabilities. So I'm just trying to, is there a comparable thing? Order, I don't know what 4822 is, so.
That's the criminal, I can look up on my phone.
Okay.
It's not actually my phone.
And they've been found not competent to stand trial.
I'm not getting service. Do you guys get service up here?
I don't know, the internet has not been.
It's not been great. I've had problems, but it might just be me. So, it is, I guess on first blush, some might say it's a pretty high threshold for somebody to be remanded to a forensic facility.
Yep. Relatively narrow class of cases, the way it's currently drafted.
Right. And so we'll hear from AHS obviously about how many that is, in particular for people with developmental disabilities, a brain injury, SUD. Okay.
Is qualifying condition defined any place? Is the
Yes.
person's suffering from a qualifying
Yep,
condition?
that is, and that is, the idea with that is that it's not just, because remember I mentioned, under the current statutory framework, the person has to be found either, in order to be transferred to custody, DMH or Dale custody, it has to be that you've been found not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to stand trial as a result of either a mental illness or a disability. So qualifying condition is intentionally broader than that. So and it could be any reason, really. I'm trying to find the definition here on here. So it happens to be on page 14. Qualifying condition means any condition, whether mental, congenital, or traumatic, however acquired or developed, or any other circumstance that resulted in the person being determined incompetent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity. So intentionally broader than mental illness or developmental disability.
Yeah, it's definitely broader.
Yeah.
To answer your question about 4822, that is linking to the criminal statute about transfer of a mentally ill person to the Commissioner of Corrections. There's corresponding 4823 specific to individuals with intellectual disability, and that was first adopted in Act 248.
So, so I guess the question is why that's not referenced in number 3.
And maybe, this question hasn't come up, very good question, but maybe it's gonna be a question for Dale or
Okay.
somebody at HS, but the question would be, was that intentional? Maybe they're not, maybe those folks are not intended to be subject to this, I don't know. Or, but if the intent is to subject, that they would be subject to this, then I think, as Katie mentioned, you want to cross-reference 4823 as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll bring that up when we
Yes,
pass Dale.
exactly.
Okay.
Very relevant question. So then you see the last criteria, they've been found not competent to stand trial. So this is the competency piece that gets you to the forensic facility.
And usually I'm also trying to sort of like envision, so this is, it sort of makes, the way this is laid out. I mean, there's oh, no, there's not, because the first thing is being held without bail. Okay. So, never mind. I answered my own question.
Okay.
I was gonna ask like, well, what about people who are, initiated a court process? The court process doesn't all happen, quickly necessarily. And so there are some people who are, remanded to the Dale Commissioner, currently, and currently there's only provisions for that for people with DD and so they could be in a community-based program as this court process
Right.
continues to find its way through. So, all right. We have a lot of we're gonna have a lot of questions.
It's a very, like I said in the very beginning, this is a very dense.
It's dense.
There's a lot to it.
And it's
Understandable, there'd be a lot.
it's a very significant change in policy for people served by Dale. And so, we have our sign up here. Because Representative Donahue, is definitely here in spirit and we want to make sure we ask all the right questions and, she would be pursuing this bill all throughout all of the committees, I will say. We're not going to be able to do that, but, I, appreciate the time and attention. And it sounds like the major thrust of the amendment as was prepared is when it came from the Senate, it didn't really have provisions for periodic reviews of a person being held. And it seems as though that now is in this amendment.
I'd say it's expanded. There was a provision, if you look at page 2, lines, say 1 through 8-ish. That
said 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, so it did have that initial 6-month review. But, and I should point out here that, this entire type of process that we're discussing here has constitutional limitations. There are boundaries out there because you're talking about basically taking away someone's liberty against their will. So that implicates the due process clause, which says someone's liberty can't be taken away by the state without due process. So doesn't mean you can't do it, means there has to be sufficient process. And the court has said specifically with Supreme Court, US Supreme Court, with respect to a case called Jackson v. Indiana, that when it comes to committing someone who's been found incompetent to stand trial, that is permissible, but without some finding of dangerousness, and perhaps even if there is, that part's a little less clear, it can't go on forever. There has to be, without some periodic review, so that the person has an opportunity to show they're not dangerous, so they should be released. See what I mean? So that all this new language is an attempt to, yes, that initial 6-month review was in the Senate bill, but this is an attempt to expand that potential for the person to get judicial review of their commitment on a regular basis, especially if they're not dangerous, so that there is a better argument for any constitutional challenge, which, as I said this morning to the Senate, to the House Judiciary Committee, will come. It's not, might this be challenged constitutionally? Well, 100% that will happen. Because we don't have this in Vermont right now. And so, at least under the Vermont Constitution, these sorts of things have never been challenged. So if you're a defense attorney, you're going to challenge it. And the US Supreme Court has said, but it's, there are strict, as I said, boundaries on what can be done. So if you're counsel representing someone who is committed pursuant to this, of course you would bring that kind of challenge. And so the attempt is to make the language as strong as possible. I think obviously as good policy as well as anticipating what could happen later on for litigation. So anyway, that's what all the highlights, which you'll see is quite a bit for the next couple of pages. But so let me describe real quick before we get lost in the language. Remember, we just said, all right, so the person gets committed there, then they get evaluated 6 months later. So that you remember, they've already been found incompetent, right? That's how they got there in the first place. So 6 months later, they have to have another evaluation, a reevaluation. Are they still incompetent, or are they now competent to stand trial? If they're still incompetent, then they continue with this, what's known as competency restoration services. So they stay there, they keep getting treatment for competency restoration. If the court says, hey, wait, actually they are competent now, well then that's lines 10 and 11. Then the court says they'd let the state's attorney and the person's counsel know, because if they're competent now they're probably going to restart the criminal case. Does that make sense? So you're at that point. So, but then the question is, all right, well, as I said, you have this sort of constitutional rule that the person can't be held there indefinitely. So how are you going to, if you think about that cycle, because the court said you can hold them for as long as it takes for them to be restored, but after that, it can't be forever. So you have the next step is going to be someone can ask at any time for an opinion as to whether or not the competency of the person is restored. This kind of gets at your question earlier on about restorability. And the court then, all right, so if that happens, the court says, all right, we're going to have that evaluation to specifically address restorability. That's bottom of page 2 now. So we're at this point, that stage of the proceeding. Someone asks for restorability, and now the court says, all right, let's look at that. Over on to page 3. What happens then? Well, the court, subdivision 2 there, line 3, page 3. If the court finds out, hey, actually the person's competency is restorable, can be restored, well, then the person keeps going through treatment. Because at that point, the court's saying, well, actually, this treatment could actually restore the person's competency. But what if the court says they're not restorable? This we're getting even closer to the fact pattern you asked about earlier. Court says we're not restorable, then, and this is line 6 through 8, page 3, the court has to hold a hearing within 60 days. And that's the hearing where they're talking about dangerousness. You're gonna have to make a dangerousness finding at that hearing, because they've already decided they're not restorable. But if they're not restorable, they're not dangerous, we can't hold the person. So they have to decide whether or not they're dangerous. So court, prior to that hearing, they have to have a forensic risk assessment, talk about their history and present dangerousness. I'm on page 3. Any tests that were employed, examiner's findings, 15 and 16, this is important. Examiner's opinion as to whether the person's release would create a substantial risk of bodily injury to another person, because that's your public safety component of the determination, of the recommendation from the forensic assessment.
Do we talk anywhere in here about the qualifications of the examiner?
That's a good question. No?
Yeah, okay, well, there's one problem.
All right, there we go.
Okay, I'm just saying, there's, not with your drafting, but with your process.
I understand all criticisms don't have to do with the way the language
Yeah, that's
together.
correct.
I appreciate that.
This is the policy as currently.
Right.
It's currently laid out.
Yeah, of course. And so lastly, that risk assessment also have an opinion about whether the person's competent to stand trial or not. Results of all the evaluations are given to everybody, the court, defense counsel, prosecutor, et cetera. We're over on page 4 now. And then we get to the point where, all right, so the court's got to decide, is this person dangerous or not? This non-restorable person. First scenario, page 4, the court says, remember, this is the burdens on the state's attorney. That's the top of page 4. State's attorney has to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that the person has a qualifying condition, and that upon the release, that qualifying condition would create a substantial risk of bodily injury to another person. If the state's attorney carries the burden, the court finds that, line 5 and 6 of page 4, court shall order continued commitment of the person, consistent with the person's forensic risk assessment. So it's got to be what that risk assessment was about, what their needs were, what their conditions are, what their risk is, that sort of thing. And then that last sentence, and this also kind of goes to something that had been alluded to earlier, the court shall order treatment of the person in the least restrictive setting, consistent with the person's forensic risk assessment and treatment needs. So that may be the facility. It may not be. It's going to depend upon what the risk assessment says about how dangerous the person is, really. So if they do order continued treatment, you see that it goes down a little bit on page 4. You're in a different category now, because you're not in that you're not restorable and in that initial 6 months. So now it's not every 6 months anymore. Now it's every year. Now it's an annual. The court has found that you're non-restorable and you're dangerous. Then the reassessment period is a little bit longer, 1 year instead of 6 months.
And this may be more a question for the chair to try to understand this, but it consistently talks about treatment. And if someone has developmental disability and there isn't treatment, it's unclear to me what happens here in this competency arena.
Precisely. I'm sure that. That's so that this is just something that I'm trying to edit myself. I'm just trying to be there, but, the policy around this whole topic has continually failed to recognize the differences really between mental illness and other disabilities. Now, those disabilities are broader than just developmental disabilities. And that is why we're going to take possession of the bill. Because it does, when judiciary is done with it, because it needs to. They're not the same. It's not the same process. It's not the same considerations. And it's, so it needs to be. So for instance, a very sort of clear-cut one, there would be differences in the evaluator, who would be a qualified evaluator for somebody with a mental health condition versus somebody with, frankly, a developmental disability or a brain injury or substance use disorder or a dementia, or, Alzheimer's disease. Those are going to have different qualifying evaluators. And and that's not addressed in the bill at all. So there's some work to do on it. And it's still being, I don't know, I haven't talked to Chair Lalonde about what his plan for voting it out of committee is yet. And we need to coordinate this with Chair Black as well. So we'll be seeing more of you, Eric. That's,
It's also with corrections institutions, right?
Yeah.
They're also have
Yeah,
strong
this
interest.
is, and so we have to do a little bit of discussion with the speaker's office about, which route should this go? Who's going to take possession versus doing flyovers? I think we're going to have some specific amendments that we want to make. And so it requires some logistical scheduling and maneuvering on the logistics, but yeah, it raises a number of issues for people with disabilities. All right. Did you get through everything you wanted to get through, Eric, or are we still going?
I mean, those are the big picture concepts. The only thing, last thing, because I said, well, what happens if the person is found dangerous? Remember, and I mentioned this before, but language-wise, remember, if the person's not found dangerous, if they're can't be restored and they're not found dangerous, that's bottom of page 4, subdivision 5. That's the case. State's attorney can't demonstrate, that's when they get released. And that turns over to page 5. Court has to release the person under treatment plan, supervision, that kind of thing. So that's I'd sort of alluded to that earlier with that big picture description. That's just the language that does that.
And so, for committee members, well, I know Representative Donahue would be tagging this whole bill. In our committee, we're going to focus most on the competency side of things, incompetent to stand trial. So, and what happens?
So in the big picture, I'll just to finish up the competency piece.
Yeah.
So the next section's bottom of page 5 over onto page 6, basically saying while the person's at the facility, they get competency restoration services, and then describes what those services might be. It's over on page 6. There could be at the forensic facility or someplace else, but the person is discharged. Subsection F, page 6, the commissioner, this is a procedure for if the person does get released, then the commissioner monitors their compliance with their conditions, so they could conceivably get brought back in if they, then it looks like they have become violent. So it looks like there's a threat of violence again, that the person can be brought back into the facility. Same court hearing is required, or similar court hearing, same type of finding. State's attorney has to show that they would be dangerous and they're suffering from a qualifying condition. There's a provision, and I'll defer to Katie on this. This is page 7, line 6. There's a specific provision about the involuntary medication, so that if their treatment's going to involve involuntary medication, then there has to be court approval for that first. And there's some prerequisites, a standard for that that's on page 7 that came from a US Supreme Court case. And if the committee wants to hear more about that, I think Katie could talk. She has drafted that language on the basis of the case. If you're interested.
Yes. So in statute around mental health, there are orders of involuntary medication that it's a court order. Part of it depends on the person's competency not to be able to make a decision about their medical care. This is a different standard. So this language is almost lifted directly from the US Supreme Court case that allows involuntary medication for competency restoration specifically if these criteria are met. So it's medically appropriate, serves an important governmental interest of bringing to trial an individual accused of a serious crime and ensuring a fair, timely prosecution. Significantly furthers these important governmental interests by making it substantially likely to render the defendant competent, and any alternative less intrusive treatments are unlikely to achieve the same results.
Next section, I'm really going to skip because that's really a very specific criminal procedure piece that's actually unrelated to the proposal. It just allows the dismissal of certain cases when a person's been found incompetent and the case has been remained inactive for a number of years. Separate issue. Section 3, then, this section deals with the not guilty by reason of insanity population. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Skip over that.
All right. So that brings us to page 13. Very, very bottom. It's really just start from there. The definitions and some general provisions defines the forensic facility as a locked facility or placement that is run by the Department of Corrections for secure evaluation, treatment, and care of persons involved in the legal system who do not require hospitalization level of care and is required for their custody, control, and treatment of those persons. Qualifying condition we already talked about. There's a provision that the evaluations can be conducted pursuant to contract that's entered into between the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services and evaluation providers. That's there because we were told by the Department of Mental Health that that's the way things are done. BGS handles these contracts. Again, just general provisions about what has to be done at the forensic facility. So now we're kind of transitioning to what takes place at the facility. I was talking about, how you get there and the core procedure. This next piece of the bill, which is about what happens when you're there, I'm going to turn it over to Katie at that point, because this is the piece that she is the attorney who's working on.
Okay.
Bottom page 14, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So just to tell you a little bit about process, Senate Judiciary had this bill downstairs. And as they were working on it, Senate Health and Welfare didn't take custody of the bill, but they worked not in unison, but collaboratively with Senate institutions to put together a lot of the language that's been integrated here. So again, this directs the Commissioner of Corrections to operate a locked facility for individuals either who are ordered for competency restoration or not guilty by reason of insanity. And then we have a list of more clinical aspects of what the forensic facility would contain. So it would be designed and operated in a manner that supports a therapeutic recovery-oriented trauma-informed environment comparable to a community-based residential treatment setting while maintaining appropriate levels of safety and security.
Okay. I'm sorry, that just
I
causes,
anticipated to have something to say.
I couldn't hold that in, sorry.
Subdivision 2, not refuse any persons it is ordered to admit and shall not require any clinical or diagnostic prerequisites for admission. Provide for the safe housing and management of persons, including the ability to separate the population by sex or gender and to otherwise address clinical safety operational considerations as appropriate. Including the possible operation of multiple facilities. Employ a clinical service director to oversee all of these forensic clinical competency restoration services. Subdivision 5, implementing staff qualifications, licensure, training, supervision, ensuring sufficient to ensure that persons transferred to the forensic facility have access to clinically appropriate care, treatment, and services. I don't want to. Yeah. I'm sorry. Ensure that a registered nurse, or physician is available to provide care, 24/7. Subdivision 7, ensuring that persons who are receiving clinically appropriate assessment training, including the development of an initial person-specific treatment plan within 72 hours of transfer to the forensic facility, which shall be reviewed periodically as clinically indicated. This is language that you wrote, that's okay, I can go over it. Records related to a person placed at the forensic
right.
facility are exempt from the Public Records Act. Subsection D, the person admitted and maintained to a forensic facility and in proceedings under either the not guilty or the not competent to stand trial sections are entitled to have counsel from Vermont Legal Aid. The commissioner is to regularly consult with the Commissioner of Mental Health. And when performing the duties required by this chapter for
Yeah, no,
operating a
just-
forensic
Katie
facility.
was pausing,
Okay.
it's like, I don't know why it just says mental health, but,
Um,
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondering if we could go back up to line 6 where it says, the ability to separate the population by sex or gender. I just wondering if that language needs to be a little stronger, and maybe it doesn't. I'm
Oh,
not good at legalese, where it would be the person's choice on how they might be segregated, gender versus sex, and maybe that's
yeah,
getting
and-
too
and-
in.
And that's not even the only thing that needs.
Oh,
to be
yeah,
considered.
I was just, no, there's a lot.
Yeah. They don't, yeah, it's.
Okay, we'll get to it later.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I can see your,
We will get to it later.
okay,
I'll keep going.
I'll just highlight.
Yes,
Okay.
highlight your, hold on to it.
Do you mind if I ask?
There was actually a recent issue around that
I am
in the correctional system. Yeah.
thinking, I may be thinking of the same thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we just went over on page 16. Section C, any records related to a person shall be exempt from public inspection. That part. Just flagging that mostly, I don't think I quite understand why. Maybe that's a legislative ask, but I don't know legally
Oh,
how that is allowed as well, but I guess that's just.
I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's
It's a
considered
policy.
public health threat, you know.
It's basically it's a carve out. It's an exemption to the public records.
I see.
But
Yeah.
you can do it or you cannot do it. You don't have to do that, but it's just, that was the policy they proposed, was to have those sorts of records.
Do we have that much liberty, or do we run into federal HIPAA issues?
Well, I was gonna say there's a HIPAA overlay there, so if there are medical documents, those are protected.
Right, so we'll look at that. I think that's there to protect the individual.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I was just gonna make sure they could have access and they're, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, that's subdivision 1.
yeah,
They-
oh, yeah,
they can-
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
to them.
Yeah, so we will look at like the balance of course, HIPAA we don't touch, obviously, that's separate, but this is, an extension and what does that serve? And what are the consequences of that?
Keep going, Katie.
This section 4A amends the section that we just looked at a later date to add an annual reporting requirement after there is actually a forensic facility up and running. Reporting is the number of persons served the previous calendar year in terms of clinical services and treatment provided. Rulemaking. This directs the Commissioner of Corrections to consult with 3 other commissioners and AHS to adopt rules to implement the forensic facility. The rules have to establish clinically appropriate standards governing the provisions of services at forensic facility, including requirements related to staffing patterns, staff ratios, staff qualifications, licensure and training, clinical supervision, delivery of safe, effective, evidence care. The rules have to address standards for quality assurance and improvement, clinical oversight, documentation and reporting requirements, safety risk management protocols, mechanism for monitoring compliance. any other provisions to ensure safe, effective, clinically appropriate implementation of the act, including potentially requiring the provision of forensic facility services in a unit that is separate from the other correctional population. So as you have probably realized at this point, there's no direction to establish a forensic facility in a particular location. So this leaves it open that it would at least be something for those commissioners to address and rule the possibility of not having this population, not having the forensic facility within the walls of a correctional facility, but having, I don't know, a separate building on the grounds of corrections or elsewhere, I suppose. I don't think you necessarily.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't need to go, we don't need to go through all of this. Let's actually do look at effective dates though, because
Okay.
I think that's a relevant.
Okay, I also want to flag for you, section 7 is an interim report, and you might be curious about amending what information should be coming back to you sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Just a second.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Effective dates?
Yeah.
Okay, so the effective date section itself in 2, which is a section I don't think you're particularly interested about misdemeanors, and the rulemaking section and the interim report, those all take effect this year. I'm gonna skip down to C, the actual procedures that allow for transfer to a forensic facility take effect January 1, 2028, and the addition of the annual reporting takes effect July 1, 2029, a year after people have after there has been a path to a forensic facility.
Thank you. Representative McGuire.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things that help me just to get some clarification and some understanding, because what I'm reading is very, very concerning, mainly in regards to the governance. So as this bill's drafted, the Department of Corrections, they're the sole agency and legal authority to establish, operate, and govern the secure forensics facility.
Yes.
All right. Also within the provisions of this bill, they're asked to consult with mental health and other agencies, but who's got the binding decision-making authority? Is DOC free to proceed regardless of their input?
With regard to what the rulemaking or
They're-
throughout?
As it was just mentioned, they are the governing authority of the forensics facility.
Mhm.
Therefore, are they also free to move and make decisions without that input? There's no dual governance.
There's not dual governance.
Okay.
The authority for operating the forensic facility falls to the Commissioner of Corrections.
The Commissioner of Corrections. All right. Therefore, also the clinical service is director, as outlined, would institutionally answer to the Commissioner of Corrections rather than any of the other health systems. And also,
When you say health systems, are you also meaning WellPath or whatever contractor
yeah,
for health services?
yeah,
Yeah, because I heard, and I don't know, this seems to make it sound like that position, that clinical position is employed by DOC. But.
yeah,
I don't
that's
know
where,
that. I don't-
that's what it seems to be implying it may.
Yeah,
So they're the true governing, so there is absolutely no custodial authority separation from clinical authority and oversight. A forensics facility, that's why it's noted, this is a very concerning a slippery slope model in regards to your Department of Corrections, complete governance and oversight. Because again, you don't have the custodial authority separation from the clinical authority separation as required with forensics facility. And frankly, that governance reads to me more of this is a public safety detention framework than it is a forensic. It's a forensics overlay with like treatment second. I'm not trying to knock the system, but you need
If I
to
could
hear
give you a
the
high five
statement.
now, I will.
You need, this is very, very and I'm speaking from the literature, from the experience, making the Department of Corrections the sole agency responsible it's not practical. It needs to have dual governance between the Department of Health and the Department of Corrections, and also placing it within inside of a facility. Did anybody look at the constitutional risks behind this?
That general structure has been upheld generally, that it looks like some states, some states do have a placement that's sort of, when you say within, did you mean physically like a building?
Well, again, I go back to the main fundamental thing that separates a forensics unit with your conventional detention things. There is a recognition that the Department of Health governs the clinical authority. Your Department of Corrections governs your security mechanisms. It is not the mission of any Department of Correction to provide, treatment. That's not their mission. A treatment provider. We're tasking.
Competency restoration.
Exactly. That is not a correctional system's scope of practice.
Yeah. So we're gonna have these conversations.
I didn't mean to go on the tirade, but I was like,
No,
hey, I get all the other stuff, but
We
frankly,
yeah, yeah. We maybe got a little bit of a different flavor in this committee than we received in other places. But,
I think that's not the first time that concern has been raised.
Yeah. Okay, so we obviously we've got traffic control. We're gonna have to take a lot of witnesses on this. And we're obviously gonna revisit it in the near future. But thank you to both of you for being here this morning. And thank you, Katie, for sticking with us all morning. We've enjoyed having you. I hope you feel better. Okay.
Any other questions? Let us know.
No, we're good for now. We're running a little behind time. So thank you very much, Eric. I know you've been putting in a lot of work on this bill over its course of moving from the Senate up here and beyond.
Yes, interesting subject.
Yeah.
I heard the committee say, regardless of all your policy concerns, it was well written. So-
Yes, that's what we said. Exactly what we said.
That's all we care.
Yeah. Policy concerns were well written. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. We are now moving to a totally different subject. We're moving to S-243, which is on the Language Justice Project. This frankly is something I didn't know anything about, and I'm very interested in learning about. So we're going to undertake this. So I'm going to look to my vice chair who has been arranging this testimony. Are there time constraints for, since we're running 15 minutes behind, I'm just wondering if there's time constraints for
I
anybody.
don't know if there's time constraints. We can ask the witnesses, but I think that it would make sense for Allison to go first to give us, if the timing works with because she runs the project and she can give us an overview of what they do and help us understand why it's important.
Okay, thank you. And just before we do that, because most of the people here have not been in our committee before, I'm just going to do a quick round of introductions also so you know who else is in the room. My name is Teresa Wood. I'm from Waterbury and I also serve Bolton, Beal Score, and Huntington.
I'm Ray Garofano. I live in, so represent Essex Junction.
Hey, I'm Jubilee McGill and I represent Bridport, Middlebury, New Haven, and Woodbridge.
Hi there, I'm Esme Cole, I represent Hartford.
Hello, my name is Zon Eastis. I live in Guilford. I also represent Vernon.
Good morning. I'm Doug Bishop and I am a representative from Colchester.
Hi, Eric McGuire, representative for Rutland City.
Then we go all the way around the outside.
Eric Warren, Director of Montgomery Smith.
Stevie Kieran, I'm with Action Schools. I'm Meg McCarthy with the Department of Health. Jessica Shapano, Policy Director, Department. Jeff Mayhem, this committee is very.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Allison. And as the witnesses come up, you can introduce yourselves for the record, and we appreciate you being here. And filling us in on what this project does. We can't hear you, Allison.
Allison, you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Thanks for having me and thanks for all you guys do. Appreciate it. My name is Alison Seeger and I am the founder and director of the Vermont Language Justice Project. And I'm here today to ask you to please pass to S243 to ensure that the Vermont Department of Health is prepared to reach everyone in Vermont, regardless of the language they speak or their ability to hear, with critical information in the event of a disease outbreak or other health emergency. So I launched the Vermont Language Justice Project 6 years ago in response to the COVID pandemic, when it became very clear that emergency communication and accurate health information wasn't reaching communities of people with language access needs, which, as we all know, are some of the most vulnerable and most isolated people in Vermont. Vermont has a history of welcoming newcomers to the state as refugees, immigrants, migrants, and asylees. And this diverse group of individuals and families speak a multitude of languages. Some are written and some are not. VLJP produced videos on all aspects of COVID on a shoestring budget, using accurate and scientific facts sought from the Vermont Department of Health website, the Vermont Commissioner of Health, Dr. Mark Levine, and the CDC. In November 2021, we were really excited to receive a CDC Racial Disparities Grant through the Vermont Department of Health, and I began to develop a small team over the next few years so that VLJP could continue to produce and expand on our life-saving health information in video format in collaboration with community partners in the Vermont Department of Health. This included a multitude of videos about COVID and COVID testing, videos about vaccinations, their importance and how they work, videos on Mpox, preventing mosquito bites, videos about keeping yourself safe during flooding, in hot weather, in cold weather, cyanobacteria, wildfires, ticks, and so many more. All these videos were made in anywhere from 10 to 21 languages, spoken commonly in Vermont, and made in collaboration with the Vermont Department of Health. We've also worked with other state departments as well as community partners and UVMMC, Brattleboro Hospital, and the Vermont Cancer Center. We've produced videos on mental health concerns, Know Your Rights with ICE and the Border Patrol, video on autism, latent TB, maternal child health warning signs, mammograms, contraception, drugs and alcohol concerns, accessing and paying for childcare in Vermont, cervical cancer, climate change, the ER, and so many more. In total, we've produced over 250 unique videos, each one in up to 21 languages, and we have had over 440,000 views. We have over 2,761 subscribers to our YouTube channel, and we've also developed an app for iPhones and Androids where all our videos can be accessed in 18 of our languages, including ASL. Now, since our grant from the CDC ended very abruptly, in January 2025, the LJP is now solely funded by donations from individuals and foundations and fee-for-service work. And we have not made a single video in collaboration with the Department of Health since that time. On October the 30th, 2025, last year, we were asked to support Hunger Free Vermont in their outreach to Vermonters with language access needs to create a video explaining the details of the impending cuts to SNAP benefits that would occur 2 days later on November the 1st. Within 36 hours, VLJP had produced 17 informational videos in 17 languages about the cuts to SNAP benefits and how the state of Vermont was going to provide the benefits for the first 15 days of November. The playlist was immediately put out on social media and within the day had received over 4,000 hits. The same day, the playlist was sent to our task force colleagues, over 80 organizations, and the audio files were sent to the Winooski and Burlington School District for distribution through their robocall system. By the end of the weekend, our videos had been viewed over 500 times. In cases of emergency, we are able to respond to a crisis usually within 24 hours with information in multiple languages, in multiple formats, translations, audio files, and videos. We use our wide distribution network to push the information out to people with language access needs throughout the entire state of Vermont. So this is where I boast a little bit and I say, I know that I can say that no other organizations can do this in Vermont, and maybe no other organizations can do this or do this in the United States. We've been recently working with the Minnesota Department of Public Health on some videos for them. And as an aside, it's really important that you know we don't use AI, but we work with community leaders who understand the nuances of what we are saying and have wide access to their communities. A week ago, I came across a notice from the Department of Health about a travel warning for people attending the Hajj in Saudi Arabia in May. It talked about the importance of getting a I always say this word wrong, meningococcal vaccine before travel, about how to find a travel clinic in your area and what to do if on return you develop fever, headache, stiff neck, nausea, or vomiting during or after travel. At VLGP, we felt it was important that this notice be made into a video with or without the financial help of the Vermont Department of Health in both Arabic and English. Our Arabic translator agreed to do the video for free, and the video was made within 24 hours and uploaded to our YouTube channel last Friday night in both Arabic and English, and shared with communities throughout Vermont. We don't know what health issues are going to be hitting our communities in the next year. However, we do know that there have already been 1,714 confirmed cases of measles in the US since January the 1st this year, which is over 75% of all cases last year in 2025. It is that time of year that many of us are remembering the beginning of COVID and how terrifying it was, and how we had to search out scientifically accurate information so we could keep ourselves and our families safe. We have really appreciated and thanked Senator Garlick for introducing S243, which proposes to require the Department of Health to distribute funds to the Vermont Language Justice Project for the creation of informational materials related to a disease outbreak or other public health emergency with a $150,000 appropriation. The state of Vermont needs to be not only prepared for the next health emergency, but be proactive to prevent emergencies from happening, whether that is through vaccinations, behavior, and lifestyle changes, by ensuring that all residents are informed in a manner that is linguistically appropriate. When it comes to health, we know that time can be of the essence. VLJP has already done the extensive groundwork to be ready for whatever comes next. We know that our work saves lives by informing all our communities of diverse language speakers throughout Vermont. So this is why I ask you to please pass S243 to ensure that the Vermont Department of Health is prepared to reach everyone in Vermont, regardless of the languages they speak or their ability to hear, with critical information in the event of disease outbreak or other health emergency. Before S243 started in the Senate, because S243 started in the Senate, the $150,000 appropriation was not included in the House version of the 27 budget. We will be working closely with Senate appropriations to include the funding in the final version of the FY27 budget, and would greatly appreciate this committee's support in that process. That was long. I have it submitted as well.
Thank you, Allison.
And I only ad-libbed for like 5 words, so it's a pretty accurate reflection of what I said.
Thank you. We do have it on our website, and we're able to follow along with you. Thank you for really alerting us to the work that you've been doing, and thank you for doing that work. One of the things that immediately popped into my head as you were talking about health issues and was H 585, which we passed out of the House and Senate and is now law because it's been signed. And that was about the availability of immunizations in Vermont, despite what's happening at the CDC level, and thinking about that would have been something that the health department should be coordinating with you all.
Absolutely.
Get that information out. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask that we hold questions for any of our witnesses to the end so that we can make sure to get through all of the witnesses who are scheduled to testify today. So yeah, I'm going to move to Honor next, and then we'll talk with Eric, and then we'll talk with the folks from the health department. Honor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Wood and members of the committee. I'm Honor Horton. I'm the Executive Director of Hunger Free Vermont. I did submit a written testimony, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm here to speak as a statewide organization that is accountable for carrying out outreach on important food access programs in the state of Vermont. And I'm here to say that since we have started working with the Vermont Language Justice Project and allocating a portion of our SNAP outreach grant funds to work with VLJP to create videos, it has really been transformational for our ability to reach everyone in Vermont with critical information. And Allison mentioned one of our most recent collaborations with VLJP, which was around the government shutdown in October and November at the federal level, and the crisis that created around SNAP benefits for people, and how people were afraid they were not going to get their 3SCORES Vermont benefits issued in November, and how in a very tight turnaround, the state of Vermont stepped in rightly to cover those benefits, and then we needed to get that information out. And VLJP is so effective because they work with members of many different communities in Vermont, native speakers who also have ties to those communities and are credible spokespeople. And that's really a huge value add and a brilliant design of how VLJP operates. And the other thing that I want to say here is that if you look at the analytics of who accessed those videos around SNAP benefits and the federal government shutdown, and how many different times different videos were accessed, the video that was accessed most frequently was the English language video. And I think this is really, really important to emphasize. We are done with the world of paper handouts and posters on bulletin boards. COVID ended that world that was already on the demise because of how people use their phones and use social media to get information. And if we are not getting information to people in video form, on apps, on ways that they actually communicate, then our good intentions as state agencies and as nonprofit organizations like Hunger Free Vermont, our good intentions can be there, but they are not going to make any difference. And so I think that's just another piece I really want to highlight. You know, Hunger Free Vermont, we have realized that we were not being as effective as we could have been in our outreach role. And Vermont Language Justice Project's work has really helped us to improve the effectiveness of our outreach work. So while I'm speaking about food access, and S243 is specifically focused on being ready to produce emergency videos on disease outbreaks and other health issues, I just wanted to come and let the committee know about the profound effectiveness of VLJP's work in our area of work. And of course, we do believe that food access is a health issue as well. But so that's why Hunger Free Vermont is here in strong support of S243. And we thank this committee for your consideration and we urge you to pass S243 to support this really, really critical need that we know will be coming for Vermonters. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nora. Appreciate that. Okay, Eric. Welcome.
An interesting little cubby here. Patch myself in. Thank you. So Eric Foran, I'm the Director of Vermont Emergency Management. So I just have a quick brief out here. So as we all know, I'm not here to directly advocate for funding that is not in the governor's budget. However, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a gap that I see in the state's ability to respond quickly to disasters. Following disasters like the 23 and 24 flooding event, it was clear that the state did not have immediately available multi-language videos that we can provide to survivors to ensure that the entire population of Vermont is receiving our messages. Having access to ready deployable multi-language preparedness videos would be beneficial to Vermonters. Utilizing an existing network of producers to create those videos would be more efficient. VEM is currently working with a producer to create preparedness videos in 19 languages with the assistance of the Racial Equity Office. VM is working with that producer to help them be included on the state contractors list so they can be used more quickly in a disaster. So in general, we have utilized these services in the past, but again, we aren't necessarily advocating for one side or the other on the funding. But I do like to point out that there are multiple languages, and we try to hit 100% of the population, and we're at 95%. So we're making a very large push to get to that. We've worked with Allison. We are working with her and now and her group to make sure that we can produce some preemptive videos. So a disaster may be coming. This is what you could do in 19 languages. We've worked a lot with them to get the videos that they've already produced onto our website to make sure that we can access them. So a lot of interaction. There's some moving forward that we're looking forward to, and we're working on it right now, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm gonna break my own rule, which I said we're gonna, but just because you're sitting in the witness chair. So what I'm hearing you say is that you have current resources that you're utilizing to use the service of the Vermont Language Justice Project around emergency management.
The Racial Equity Office has a funding source.
So through them.
Through them.
Okay.
They have some funding to convert existing preparedness documentation into multiple languages. So we're using that to work with Allison and her group. And then they actually have some reoccurring funding for new preparedness videos. So we're working with them on that as well.
Okay.
Trying to utilize that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Thank
make you.
you so much for your flexibility and being available last minute, but can you also talk a little bit about two things? One, how does it work for those funds to be accessed? Like who determines what emergency or what project can be requested of the ORE to be translated? And then second, you mentioned working with the organization with VL, not just Language Justice Project, to become to get on the list of state contractors. If you can just talk about like, what does that process look like, if you know, and how long does it take, and what does the organization need to provide to like be able to do that?
Good question. So with the current project, we've been working directly with BLJCP and the Office of Racial Equity to make sure that these preparedness videos fall in line with what the understanding of that fund is. And so they've agreed that it makes sense to create these preparedness videos. So really it's in lots of technical terms here, but I think it's an MOA with Racial Equity to give us the money to then have a contract with Allison's group to make this very specific subset of videos. So that's this project. In the future, we want to be able to, in an event of a disaster, be able to call on Allison very quickly. And she says she has very quick turnaround. That would be easier if on a contract list. So the state agencies can use the contract list and go to them directly. You don't have to RFP. You don't have to do all the paperwork. To get her on that list, I think there's lots of hurdles there. So we're working with them to make sure that they get through the hurdles. I don't know the specifics of it, but our group is working to make sure they're submitting the paperwork. I think we have to send out an RFP for the general idea of what we expect them to do. It's not just for VEM, it's for all state agencies. So it opens it up much larger. So I believe that RFP goes out. Allison made the point. There's really no one else in the state of Vermont that can do these things. but it puts it out there at the bigger level so individuals can send things in. So that would get their group closer and easily accessible during an event where time is of the essence.
How long does that process usually take?
A couple months, I think. So we're trying to push it as quickly as we can before flood season comes.
Allison, do you want to
Well,
respond?
we're on the Vermont Buys list. We are fiscally sponsored by United Way of Vermont, which is the 211 organization. So we're actually on the Vermont Buys. Yesterday I signed up with the business something of Vermont as well. You have to know I'm really a social worker by training. So it's brand new to me in the last couple of years, all this other stuff. But we've done multiple contracts with the Department of Mental Health. We've just the Department of Libraries, which they see that we're on the Vermont Buys, and so we've contracted with them. We've just signed the contract for them. So we've done huge projects with the Vermont Department of Labor. So we are there in the system, and it's just very confusing what else we have to do. You tell us what hurdle we have to jump, and we will jump it.
And that's what we're working on. Vermont Buys is a system that allows you to be paid on an existing contract.
Okay.
So as she mentioned, she has contracts with these groups because they reached out to her specifically. So having a contract, having them on the actual pre-authorized contract list just makes some of that upfront stuff. You don't have to do an RFP. You just can go out to them directly. So it should get her in the door quickly. And theoretically, other agencies that do the same thing. But like she said, she's kind of the only game in town because she does a fantastic job at it. So.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move to the health department now. I'm not sure who all is speaking first, or
Song is gonna go first, and we have Amber.
okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was going to say good morning. It's almost afternoon. Good day, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you so much for your work on this committee. For the record, I'm Song Wen, pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm with the Vermont Department of Health, Director of Health Equity, and I'm joined by Amber Leventry.
Hi, Amber Leventry, they, them pronouns. Thank you for having us. I am one of the public health communication officers at Department of Health. So I'm here to support Song in any questions you may all have, but I'm going to let Song take the lead on the testimony.
Thank you, Amber. So as some of you may already know, health equity is a core part of the health department's mission and values. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, it became clear that one of the ways that we could enhance our equity work was really to ensure that our public health information was accessible to as many people in Vermont as possible, including translated materials. Also during the pandemic, we were fortunate enough to receive federal funds, including the CDC Health Disparities Grant that's been referenced before, specifically focused on reducing health disparities, and also supported a variety of equity-related work at the health department. Language Justice Project became a valued partner, particularly around that time. They were able to create and distribute messages very quickly in various languages and really understood the unique cultural differences that helped messages really resonate with the public. And a lot of those materials, we still reference to this day. So we understand that people who speak and read other languages absolutely need information to stay safe and healthy just as urgently as those who speak and read English. In emergency situations like a pandemic or flood, not having information readily available is not just inequitable. We know that it can put lives at risk. On a personal note, I am a proud descendant of a former refugee from Vietnam and immigrant from South Korea, born and raised in Vermont. I grew up seeing my parents struggle every day with language access needs. It impacted how they got their needs met or not, and absolutely impacted how I was able to access resources growing up in Vermont. I can attest that the health department takes translation and interpretation very seriously. At the department, we do regularly assess language needs to better serve Vermonters. Right now, in this moment, we have nearly 2,000 translated materials up on our website, including vital documents and general resources for Vermonters who need to access information like WIC applications, vaccination consent forms, etc. When there's an emergency that requires the health department's guidance, we lean on our content experts to really determine if new materials are needed to be created. We have proactively created evergreen materials that are shared on our website, distributed through our partners to ensure timely messaging. And we also have WhatsApp as an alternative form of communication for these alerts. Additionally, when we apply for grants, funding is regularly set aside for translation materials. For example, right now in this moment, the health department has a public health infrastructure grant where we have a budget line item set aside for translation and interpretation. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Office of Racial Equity to access funds that they've set aside for vital translations specifically. So bottom line, the health department already has resources to do translation work consistently. We also recognize that all of state government would really benefit from the important work that Vermont Language Justice Project is doing. And we absolutely support Vermont Language Justice Project's efforts to ensure that their services can be accessed more readily by state government, even beyond the health department. In a case of a statewide emergency, there are other agencies that are often leading the messages, and it's not always the health department who is sort of at the front of those messages. So it's clear from the health department's perspective that a broader approach beyond the health department for translation supports would help reach more Vermonters with critical information most effectively. Thank you.
Amber, do you have anything you want to add?
No, Song summed it up, and I know Eric well from other groups, and the state contract is something I've talked to Allison about and that we're also advocating for and happy to help with any overcoming those hurdles as well. So I'm happy to assist in questions, but Song did a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just double checking the room. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you both for being here. I know both of you personally. I'm so happy to see you here. Song, can you tell us how the health department currently determines what projects should be translated? Because I think Allison's testimony said that since the end of the CDC grant, that the health department has not engaged their services for any translations. So just wondering, like, what is your determination process in-house at VDH to determine whether or not something is needed? Because as Chair mentioned, like our immunization bill that just passed, we all kind of thought about that and thought, oh, that would have been something that would be really good to have translated.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can start and I may turn it over to Amber as well to add to this. But new translation needs, they may be identified through a couple of different ways, some through community partners. We also have various local health offices throughout the state that really feed information up to our central office as well. And, really there are a number of avenues where we're able to get feedback from folks through my team, the Health Equity Integration team, also various committees that our staff sit on. And we have a broad network of partners and folks in the community that really help feed information up to the health department and also support feeding our information out to communities. So, oftentimes when resources are, shrinking for public health, we have had to make some strategic decisions around, how to really prioritize the highest needs and use our funds strategically, particularly since our CDC Health Disparities Grant ended.
Thank you.
Allison, I want to ask you a question. So it seems like in sort of other places in state government and outside of state government, like with a NORS organization, that they are figuring out ways to utilize your services. And I guess I'm wanting to be clear about the request here seems to be specifically for the health department. Is that what I don't want to make assumptions, I guess, is my question.
No, this one is specifically for the health department. And I think that's because there are I started thinking when the measles outbreak started, we managed to get in a video about being vaccinated for measles just before the chop came down and no more money was being given to us. I think about there was a whooping cough outbreak in I think Lamoille County. Things like that. I think had we still had the CDC grant, we'd have probably done videos about that. The thing about the changes that you talked about regarding vaccination, we would have put a video out about that. So those are some of and now I've forgotten what your question was, but those are some of the things that we would be doing.
I think you answered the question.
But I also really want to really clear. Some of the languages that we do videos in are not translatable because they're not written languages. My is a huge, it's spoken by many people who would normally be called Somali, but they're actually Somali Bantu. Majority of them do not speak Somali. My is not a written language. So we can have translations in all sorts of languages, but you're not going to be reaching certain populations if they're not done in languages that can't be written. And I feel like this isn't against the health department because they helped us get this whole project going, but I feel that the health department has a very systematic way that they do things. We are much more on the ground, kind of in touch with people. Like, I have everybody's phone number who I work with, all my contractors, and we are able to get messages out to the people in a really different way without things going up hierarchies and going back down or going sideways. We get them as, let me just give you one example. So we work with our Mandarin translator. She has a WhatsApp group of over 100 Mandarin speakers throughout the state of Vermont who she works with independently as an interpreter. Whenever we do a message, our Mandarin message goes back to her. She then sends it out to those 100 people, boom, like that, within, 10 minutes of us making the message. So I think, that Department of Health does things in particular ways, and I know that they find that we are incredibly useful as the Department of Emergency Management because we can get messages out in all sorts of unorthodox, unusual kinds of ways in that way. So I want to say that as well.
Thank you. I think that is a really important point to make. So by things being posted on a website is not the most efficient way to get things out to people. And I think, Honor spoke to that in her testimony. And I appreciate that, honestly, how far I've worked in state government for a number of years, and we've come a long ways in state government in terms of trying to make it accessible to people where English is not their first language, and not saying anything, against the efforts of the health department, but the need to be proactive and the need to be quickly active in some cases, like emergency management or a very significant health concern that is immediately arising. I think the Vermont Language Justice Project has shown, just by the example that we heard and saw in the testimony, getting a request one day and within 48 hours, it was out and distributed to lots of different people. And so, the presence of something on a website just isn't enough these days. And I'm curious, Song or Amber, have you done what emergency management is doing and working with the Office of Racial Justice, Office of Racial Equity to access funding that they have in order to do any kind of messaging for health department issues?
Yeah, Song, if it's okay, I'll speak to this. So it's an MOU, and I do manage that. I work with the Office of Racial Equity, and the funds are to translate vital documents and/or documents considered vital or other projects. Video projects are fine. Where we run into our own barriers at health is we need to go through the RFP process to work with Vermont Language Justice Project because they're an approved vendor. And so in order to be equitable at the process, we have to put out a bid to several vendors. And so I've, asked Allison, I agree with Eric, if we had them as a state contract, that wouldn't be a question. We could just go directly to Allison and say, hey, we have this fact sheet. from this particular division. We think it's important to also be translated in videos. Let's do it. Right now, we can't do that using those MOU funds. We can translate information, and I totally agree. Between literacy issues and people who don't have access to the internet, having information just on a website isn't enough. And so we are proactive in making sure we get information out onto WhatsApp, on social when it's appropriate. Not all people who don't speak English aren't always on Facebook or Instagram. I try to not be on Facebook any more than I need to be, but we do use other avenues, and we do work really, really closely with local health and community partners to make sure we're getting information from either a piece of paper to a family member or word of mouth. So we do work closely with folks, especially when it came with the bird flu. We work closely with Bridges to Health, and we had interpreters on site at farms giving information directly to those people to make sure that they were protected, and they were proactive about protecting themselves. So even though we don't always do everything in video translations, we are working closely with the community and other partners to make sure they're getting the information in the way that they need it and not just on a website.
So I guess, so I appreciate that. I'm also struck by the fact that when the CDC funding ended, so did your contract, or so did your contact, it seems, at least from listening to the testimony earlier. It seemed like there hasn't been any contact since January 2025, around, I think that was the date.
January 20.
So I'm just trying to, I guess, trying to figure out, it seems like, you know, what you were just talking about, Amber, seems to be in contrast to what the previous witness said about there being previously a more fluid relationship between the health department and the Language Justice Project.
I just want to say that we actually got an email from the lead department within Vermont Health Department, and we're going to be meeting with them next week. So that's the first one since the CDC contract ended.
So certainly we'll check in to see what we can do about if there's anything that we can do to expedite the being on Vermont Buys, registered as a potential vendor in the state. That's not the same thing as being essentially a pre-qualified vendor. So we'll see what we can do about that. I just made a note to maybe that's an addition to our bill, because an RFP process for an entity that is the only one in the state is kind of a silly thing.
Who's also responding in urgent situation.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah, proven.
Exactly.
It's a
And
proven
it's
entity.
only- Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay. Any other questions for the group? And I, honestly, I really appreciate the fact that I didn't know anything about this until this morning. Well, I mean, until we got the bill and I started learning about it. But I appreciate, Allison, that you exist, and
the work that you do,
and that we, we are encouraging more diversity of our population in Vermont, and being able to have them have accessibility to all the same things, that information that English speaking people do, I think is important, particularly around health and emergency, but on other issues. So anybody watching this, I'd encourage you to be contacting the Language Justice Project so you can get the word out.
Yes, please check out our website. We have every video that we've ever made listed.
I have checked it out. Yeah.
The breadth of subjects, but you can see how useful it would be.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying ASL as well, because that is something that is, in some cases in our world here, a common need. So it's good to know. I'm going to also pass along your information to our Sergeant at Arms office for legislative operations. I think that could be helpful in some circumstances. So yes, yeah. So we have it from Allison and Honor. So if you could send in your written testimony, that would be good, and Eric, you as well. That would be good. Any final questions for the witnesses? And we are going to be hearing from the Office of Racial Equity. They just were not able to be here this morning. Okay, thank you all for being here so much. We appreciate it. And again, Allison, thank you for the work that you do on behalf of Vermonters.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
All righty, take care.
Bye.
All right. We are going to be on the floor at 1. Look forward to a rousing debate on the education bill. And we will not be meeting after the floor, as you've probably figured out. I just as a reminder, I'm not here tomorrow. We have a scheduled field trip. Ray is going to be in charge of whether we need to reschedule that, depending upon what other amendments pop up on 9:55 between second and third reading. We will need to be in touch with Angie Harbin at Downstreet Housing. If we need to reschedule, and if we can kind of make that decision by 10:30 or so, that'd be good to let her know.